In this video, we're going to look at how having a product-focused mindset can really help you progress in your career as a designer. So, what do we mean by a product-focused mindset? So, what this effectively is thinking about not only the end user using the product itself, but also thinking about the market the product sits within, the customers that you're going to be selling to, and what the goals of the business are that you're working with. So if we just zoom in for a moment on the typical day-to-day that we would find ourselves doing as product and UX designers, and much of that is centered around the specific people or group or type of people that we solve a problem for. And we do that by designing solutions that enable them to complete their tasks much easier, with less friction, and actually help them achieve their goals using the software that we design. So by doing that day to day, we already have a solid foundation for thinking about things from a product mindset and considering how the product might fit into their day-to-day lives and what their ecosystem looks like in terms of the other tools they might use, the other software that they interact with daily, and how the products that we design actually fit into that and how that affects their entire customer journey and user experience. Now, if we take a broader look at that, one of the key things that I'll point out is that it's often valuable to think about the end users of the product and the customers as two separate people. Because particularly when you're working with large-scale products, and probably more appropriate for B2B, is that oftentimes the people who actually purchase that product or the people that the company would be selling to are often very different to the people who are using the product day to day. Now, this is effectively a symptom of just a large corporation who manage the purchase of software, procure certain tools, tends to be different to the people who are on the ground actually getting value from that software on a daily basis. So when we talk about customers and users sometimes being separate people, that typically is the reason why. Now, what we can start to do there is to think differently about how that entire journey looks. So instead of just focusing on specific user journeys and actual screens that customers move through, and how they interact with certain design decisions that you make, interactions in terms of, going through certain floors and actually using the software itself, we can start to broaden that and think about how the customer actually discovers the product in the first place and what type of goals they have as a business, thinking about your entire customer profile there. What do they want to achieve with this software? So not only what does the specific primary user that you're designing for day to day, what do they want to achieve? How does that fit into the wider goal of the customer that you're looking to serve or work with? A lot of the times there'll be crossover with different departments within your company to look at these areas. So if we think about those initial touch points that the customer might have to discover the product itself, that might typically sit within the marketing teams and customer success and sales as that customer moves through the journey and into that funnel, to start to build awareness of the product, how that fits into their, their workflow and how that might become valuable to them as a company and as a customer. So even just having an awareness of that and maybe speaking to those teams within your company around how they operate and how they position that externally to attract those customers and to build that awareness and show value in those early stages. So even just having an awareness of what goes on in that process is really going to help you to think about, well, how should the product be designed in a way that kind of continues on from that process? And as people onboard into the software, what kind of things are they already aware of? Like, how much do they know about what the product does? And that's really going to help you to create more of a seamless experience for when people do onboard and people within that company do kind of start to see how the software works day to day, how much awareness they already have of where the product sits within their workflow. So even if you don't change anything about the deliverables that you work on each day, just understanding that initial piece of the journey, and appreciating that it's not always the same people who actually go through that sales process that end up actually using the product day to day. So that's really, really important to keep in mind when we start to think about that broader product thinking mentality. The next piece that goes into that is thinking about the business goals a lot more as we design. And this is something that, again, should come into the work you do daily, to think about how the design decisions that you make within specific flows and user journeys within the product actually help the business in some way. Oftentimes this isn't totally clear, especially when you're getting down into the details. It can be easy to lose sight of how certain design tweaks and updates that you make actually impact the business at a higher level. Having said that, there's always some way you can look to find out the KPIs and the high-level goals that the business has. It could be on a quarterly basis, could be annual, it could just be high-level objectives that the company has. Do some digging to find out what those goals look like and keep them top of mind as you move through the daily tasks that you complete. And the crucial thing here is to start to notice the crossover between the actual business goals and what the customer and what the user is actually trying to achieve. So the closer those two things are, the closer you are to what we would call product market fit, effectively just knowing that you're providing a valuable product to the end user. And having those two things aligned, so the business goals, the customer and the user needs, is really going to make making decisions a lot easier, because you don't have to kind of manage the two as separate entities. You can start to think about how the design decisions that you make within the product interface, the UX, the journeys, how they can benefit both the business and the end user and customers. And if those two are ultimately the same thing, then I guess that's the holy grail when it comes to product design, is that you're not having to fight between and make decisions that are at odds with each other to satisfy the business by creating a poor or dark user experience just to facilitate business goals. That's not a great position to be in, because obviously you're going against creating the best experience for the user in order to, generate revenue for the business. Now, of course, you've got to be practical in certain situations and be mindful of what the business is trying to achieve that you work with, and this is something that is kind of at an individual level. However, if you can be in an environment where creating a positive user experience for the end user, helping them achieve their goals, actually aligns to what the business wants to achieve, then that's going to help everybody. Not only does it make your life easier as a designer by making smarter decisions that help everyone involved, it just means that the business itself, the product, is providing a lot of value, and it's doing so in a way that meets the objectives of the company. So it's a win-win for everybody, effectively. And as a designer who will often be speaking to the end users of the product and starting to facilitate conversations with the likes of sales, marketing, customer success, to really understand what the customer is looking to get out of the product at a higher level, then you can be in a great position there to have a lot of insight into many different areas and touch points that people have with the product experience, that you can then use that to speak to various stakeholders within the company to validate that actually the business goals and the customer needs do align in an appropriate way, and how design is really a huge facilitator of those two things coming together in a more practical way. So definitely worth kind of being mindful and having regular conversations with key stakeholders in the business that you're working with to make sure that you're always aligned when it comes to the goals of the business and what you're trying to deliver to the end user. Now, a great way you can start to get more into this is to work with the product managers within your team and within your company, if you have the luxury of having product managers who you can work with daily, then this is a fantastic relationship that you can start to build, because there's a lot of crossover in those two roles. And you'll probably read a lot and maybe have experienced yourself about how sometimes the waters get a bit muddy around whose responsibility it is to run things like customer interviews, workshops with users, even wireframes. I think there's been a lot of kind of discussion over the years around where certain responsibilities sit between a product manager and a UX designer. But I would always say that from experience and having worked with some fantastic product managers in my time, it always comes down to just a case-by-case basis and speaking to them regularly to really understand how they operate, the certain tools and workflows they use to find out customer and user insights, and how they bring that back into the team. And just getting a feel for their way of operating means that you can start to work closely with them and figure out where the responsibilities lie when it comes to things like user interviews, for example. And this is something potentially you could collaborate on, and you can definitely show the value in design in those situations if you have that skill set. And it just depends on where you would both prefer to spend the most time. Obviously, there's definite distinctions there, because with product managers, they're obviously kind of working closer with business stakeholders, potentially sitting in the middle between the business, technology, and design. So they have a good appreciation for those key areas. And as the designer in that situation, you can absolutely help them to have more of an understanding of why certain decisions are made for the user experience and how that ties in closely with the goals of the users and the customers. And I would always recommend having regular check-ins with the product manager or product managers that you're working with, and just making sure you're always on the same page, always looking ahead in terms of what they're thinking as to where the product's direction should be headed, and equally looking at what's in flight in terms of how you can roll out and test updates rapidly to make sure that you're validating, and always making sure that you're providing value with the designs that then go into development and working with engineering to deliver. The earlier you can have those discussions with the product manager, the quicker you're going to find ways to validate those choices and, save potentially a lot of wasted time for these things to be built, if you can effectively team up to produce a prototype and then put that in front of a set of users that you're working with, or close customers that you have there who are happy to participate in these sessions. And then you can have kind of a rapid feedback loop there without ever getting into a build process that can be quite costly and heavy on time, to then only find out that you're going to be making changes anyway. So it's definitely a great relationship to have, and just kind of understanding case by case where you can provide the most value in that product manager and designer relationship is definitely the way to go. So it's really key to kind of getting more into this product thinking mindset. Okay, just a short one today, but I hope you found this valuable, and I'd always love to hear about your experiences working with product teams, working as a solo designer, and how you've navigated that yourself. So don't forget to leave that in the comments. And if you found this valuable, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.